Hello, welcome to the second ship of Theses. My culminating project is titled Real Native, a content analysis of music education repertoire that incorporates Native American music. Recent efforts by researchers and practitioners focused on reviewing repertoire available for instrumental band curriculum and the potential of including Native American cultures may benefit the design of culturally responsive pedagogy. This study aims to provide a content analysis of current repertoire, including Native American culture, represented by descriptive thematic codes. The main research question kind of guiding this was what music resources are available in the United States to support music educators in teaching Native American music and culture, specifically within traditional concert band settings in grades 5 through 12. In addition, how do these resources differ in musical content, cultural representation, and composer identity? Two main theoretical frameworks are kind of working in how I designed and conducted this study. The first is the theory of enculturation and acculturation, first suggested by Herskovits in the late 1940s and 50s. The definition has been expanded upon by anthropologists, leading to my own working definition as enculturation is the process which individuals acquire knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values of their own societies, and acculturation involves the process of cross-cultural exchange to occur. In instances of acculturation methods applied to Native American communities, it's important to note historical influences of colonialism and residential schools that contributes to power dynamics from the hegemonic dominant white society. The impact of these may be prevalent in representations of Native American tribal communities and educational resources, which in music education can include repertoire utilized by music educators. This theory can then be paired with Ladson-Billings' theory of culturally relevant pedagogy that aims to address issues of pedagogical reform of practitioners and music teacher educators rather than solely curricular reform. Billings' theory is expanded upon by scholars like Dr. Linden McCoy in their book on culturally responsive pedagogy, pairing theoretical concepts with practitioner applications. And in addition, additional calls for reforms and inclusion of multicultural music education by scholars like Bells and Reimer also contribute to the growing foundation of content. Scholars and practitioners advocating for the inclusion of Native American music, like Kay Edwards and Kasenick and Winslow, have proposed various methods of instruction for elementary music, including the use of Native American flute in instrumental settings. Scholars such as Witt, Troutman, and Howard have raised and considered questions of cultural appropriation and assimilation in music education that may contribute to researchers like Ballard, McDonald, and Boyea pushing for thoughtful consideration and authentic resources in music ed curriculum to generate respectful depictions of Native American music and culture. So the purpose of this study was to identify and categorize instrumental music resources connected to Native American culture marketed for use in United States school band programs through a qualitative descriptive content analysis of concert band compositions listed on 3 major commercial online music databases, Stanton's, J.W. Pepper, and Howlett. Data collection criteria included compositions explicitly referencing Native American culture in title or program publisher notes or description, or pieces that titles or descriptions may indicate some connection to Native American or indigenous cultures or source material. Additionally, works were based on 5 through 12 grade band ensemble pieces and skill level, roughly a grade 1 through 4 piece level. The data analysis process that I used to code was the qualitative descriptive content analysis approach with thematic codes that were developed prior to analysis and then revised throughout the process as more data was collected. The 3 main thematic codes included tribal specificity, generalizable Native American terminology, and repertoire with titles or descriptions that indicated indigenous connection. So the first thematic category was pieces that explicitly list tribal affiliation, and within that there were 15 tribes that were identified out of a sample of about 44 pieces that I found on those 3 major sites. Interesting to note is a couple of the things that don't fully fit this code, such as the Alaskan tribes, which was listed as Alaskan tribes, but nothing more specific about which Alaskan tribes it may be. The Cherokee tribe, which does not indicate whether it is the eastern or western band of Cherokee, as well as the Cherokee and Creek tribe code that came up that also contributes to this not fitting perfectly in that one definition. Intertribal, being a mixture of tribal groups, but not indicating which tribal groups it is being. And then multiple plural ones, like the Iroquois and Ojibwe tribes, the Pueblo tribes, and the Swift Creek and Wheaton Island tribes, that lumped these multiple tribes into one description. The second thematic code was pieces that indicate broad Native American terms, with the most substantial one being in the descriptions or title, the word Native American. Additionally, like mentioned, some fit in multiple codes, like the Cherokee, Alaskan, and Intertribal that I just mentioned, but also the Huron tribe fits in this code as well, because there are some pieces that the source material says clearly in the description it is of the Huron tribe, and then in others of the same source material it does not list it. So one can infer potentially that it is of the Huron tribe without having that, but it is also a difficult thing to say. The third thematic code is pieces that don't expressly state any affiliation but imply connection. Again, most things fell under no tribes indicated, and just simple descriptions of musical content, places on adjudication websites, generic descriptions that publishers have, or no description at all. Again, thematic codes were represented in multiple tribes, Alaskan, Cherokee, and Huron, as previously mentioned, and then in this case also the Penland tribe. So, in addition to support these qualitative descriptive thematic codes, I also did some qualitative descriptive statistics that reinforce these themes being identified, and took a look at how many pieces resided on each of the three major websites that I collected the sample from: Stanton's, J.W. Pepper, and Hal Leonard. Interesting to note is that J.W. Pepper has the most complete collection of all pieces out of all three sites. Also interesting to note is that these numbers are indicated multiple times. So on the left-hand side, these are the total on each site, but then multiple additional combinations exist. Stans and J.W. Pepper had 21 combined, represented in some of these numbers. Stans and Hal Leonard, 9. J.W. Pepper, Hal Leonard, 10, and so on and so forth. All sites refers to a combination of all three sites. So Stans, J.W. Pepper, and Hal Leonard all possess those. So the right-hand side has multiple things that are also represented in the total numbers on the left. Another qualitative descriptive statistic that I looked at was the grade levels and how those interacted with the thematic codes. Grade levels going from grade 1 through grade 4, and then no grade level associated. Interesting to note is that with tribal affiliation represented, more pieces were represented across grade levels, whereas the broader or more implied we got, the less across the board those pieces became, especially in the lower grade ranges. Finally, the frequency of how many pieces corresponded with how many tribes were mentioned was also collected, and you can see those different tribes, how many pieces for each were indicated. Cherokee having 6, having the most, but that could be a misnomer because of the issues that we talked about earlier. Squamish and Huron having 5. Again, Huron may have some difficulty in categorizing that. Squamish was a lot more explicit. So we'll take a look now at some of the musical examples of each of these thematic codes. The first one being the tribal affiliation represented. So this piece is by Bob Baker and Robert Buckley and is titled Eagle Song. The description indicates the tribal connection, Bob Baker being a member of the Squamish First Nation and a performer, as well as some musical content and the duration. So you can see beautiful pentatonic melody and duration 2 minutes and 40 seconds. We won't listen to the whole thing, but we'll take a listen right now. broad Native American connection. This piece is by William Owens and is titled Yanaguski. The description indicates a possible connection to Chief Yanaguski, formerly of the Eastern Band of Cherokee in North Carolina. He did leave the Cherokee Nation and moved some of his followers, the Oconaluftee, off into a different part of North Carolina. And it also describes some of the musical content, so you can see a driving allegro section featuring spectacular woodwind features with bold, heroic brass statements and a large battery to give you all the ingredients you need for a fantastic piece. This is a piece grade level for middle schoolers and is performed by middle schoolers. So. The third thematic code, the implied connection musical example, is the piece by James Barnes and is titled Trail of Tears. The description makes no reference to the historical indigenous source material indicated by the title, but rather mentions its possible position as a popular piece for adjudication events. And we'll take a listen to this as well. Based on this study, I aim to conduct additional research to evaluate the cultural authenticity and educational merit of these pieces, and potentially similar evaluations of content by Native American composers that may benefit the field of music education with authentic resources for multicultural and culturally responsive classrooms. Thank you. Any questions?
With this study being done, do you plan to commission pieces if you find that there are gaps that should be filled?
That's not initially a plan that I have currently in the works. It is something that I think may end up being beneficial. I think it will depend on how the next set of studies go with the evaluation of the content that is available. And I think that's the first thing that I prioritize before trying to add more to an already difficult market, or a market that music educators have mentioned they have trouble finding pieces. So I think first starting with what's available and then finding ways to go through and evaluate and then collect and put out lists that music educators can access easily. And then possibly from that point, then finding more Native American composers, indigenous people to make more compositions. Yes. Good question. Okay.
How do band directors avoid programming music that they might think have good intentions but could be appropriate?
The biggest thing is research, and that takes time and takes effort. So that's part of kind of the theory of culturally responsive pedagogy as I kind of understand it, which is understanding the students that are in your room, the cultural knowledge that they're bringing into the classroom, and then how you can build off of that. So if you find and can find yourself in situations where you could reach out to students and ask them, hey, I'm interested in learning more about the cultures that maybe you are representing and how I can help you use that knowledge to learn new concepts in music education, then they can be a guide for you in learning those things. It also, on the other side, takes just the effort of wanting to do those things and having collections evaluated for authenticity and educational merit, like I'm proposing to do after this study, would help shorten that process for music educators so that they can come to these conversations a little more quickly and more positively. Thank you.
What would you say is like a good first step for music educators trying to integrate this into their programs, or that have maybe even like the same goals as you do?
I think a great first step is to get out of your comfort zone and to immerse yourself in cultures that are unfamiliar to you in an open and earnest way. If you can come as a learner and a listener and essentially almost a baby to a culture and work through the theory of enculturation, where you are, and acculturation, where you are cross-culturally taking your knowledge and learning in another group, I think that's the first step in just opening yourself up to multiple possibilities. There may be other steps, but that's me. Go ahead.
When programming this music, how would you personally stress the cultural importance of it to your students?
I think it's the same as I would stress the cultural importance of any other piece. This is where the theories of like culturally relevant pedagogy and culturally responsive pedagogy and teachings comes more into play. If you are applying those as a pedagogical approach, then you are doing the responsible thing and the responsive thing across all groups, all pieces. It becomes difficult in the instances where some of these things don't have those descriptions, so there's more knowledge that you may have to dig for. But if you are applying those things to all pieces, then I think it becomes really easy, it becomes second nature. Go ahead.
Did you look specifically at like how many of these melodies are like truly authentic native melodies versus appropriated?
So that's part of what I intend to do with the next step, is that this is essentially more of just, let's find the data, let's code it so that it's easier to then have either a panel of cultural bearers in each of these communities, a panel of music educators or music education students, look at the educational merits, look at the rhythm, maybe some composition people. So I think this becomes a very interdisciplinary thing the longer it goes on, and that's something that I would focus on more with that step rather than what I did here.
All right, good.
As we're changing over, this is Squirrel Hockey. It'll make more sense in a little bit.